population would need to be accommodated, as the supply issues would increase with it. Food would not be a problem, at least for a few days, but other supplies... It was at this point that the leader of that city decided to change the research conducted to the sawmill, because the wood piles were running out. And speaking of wood, much of it would be needed. In order to establish a scout party. In preparation of the next wave of refugees, more tents were built. Yes, the sooner that a scout party was established, the sooner the waste could be searched for anything that was needed, and also any that would find themselves in need of assistance. Although by this point, one assistance needed was additional medical facilities. Yes. As one medical post was clearly not enough. Yes, for all the focus with food and shelter, other things, didn't seem to be that much of a priority. Although that would need to change, as coal and wood. That would be something that would be most essential. As for where to put the sawmill, near the western forest or wood well, whatever you want to call it, that's where the sawmill gets built. As a supply of wood was needed much sooner than the eastern pile gets used up. And by this point, a scout party was established and sent to retrieve those lost children. Many of the workers were sent to the coal piles, mostly to buy, for lack of a better expression, time to, well, for the coal thumper to be built, and then a more long-term supply could be established. As for other supplies, not to mention space for additional habitation, that would need to be remedied when a larger supply of coal was established. As for construction, that would need to wait. At least until those that were hungry had eaten. Which by this point, they did. They're no good to anyone half-starved. The next day, let us just say that there'll be another supply of wood. As for a sawmill to the southeast, well, that would depend on how much space is left. As a coal thumper is needed. By this point. As those piles of coal will not last forever. As for those seams of coal, nearby, the resource piles to the southeast, that would require more advanced technologies. Technologies that would require more wood. Next work shift, they had reached a trail bend and found a few engineers along with the missing children. They were escorted back to their city. The search for supplies could wait.
Get going! Time to earn your bread.
Those gathering posts. It was decided that rather than dismantle use them with the coal thumpers, it would save on resources and allow for them to be used for a different purpose. gathering post would be needed around the northern resource piles, largely to gather the steel needed to reach the iron deposits needed to make more steel. Although by this point, it was unclear where it would be placed, although research on the steelworks commenced. Oh yes, and the fighting arena was built. Well, being built by this point. Well, it's best to give the people a little hope, along with some evening entertainment. Then we have more inhabitants of the city of the
Hear me.
Oh yes, and the law
In the city.
to build a public house was written. In fact, let's call this city Sanctuary. Well, yes, a few engineers and children arrived. As for the scout party that's arrived to deliver the children and the engineers, that was sent back. And the missing children being found gave the people a little hope. Oh yes, as for the coal thumper, space for that needed to be cleared. Although one thing that was needed sooner rather than later was an additional food supply. And thankfully, workers who could gather it were arriving. Although there was a question of where to build it. Preferably within existing heat zones. Although by this point, the situation was growing ever more desperate, and the northern steam core was reactivated, even though it would increase the strain on resources. Coal and wood.
Gather your tools.
Both were needed. Both there wasn't enough of. As for the group that would provide more food for that city, let us call this either Sanctuary or New Liverpool. Well, it would seem to make sense, doesn't it? More hope was established for the people of that city. Although they needed more accommodation that was built to the north. And it was revealed that there were 2 places for steel gathering. All that was needed was to get there. As well as have the steel needed to build the steam hub. Although that would also require the coal to fuel it. Yes. There was enough. Well, there was a means of getting coal long term, but the problem was getting, well, having enough space to have it built. An ever-growing problem. Perhaps the wastes would reveal more resources. It was unknown if there are any more groups that were stranded out there. Those that needed help. middle of the night, the scout party found an abandoned camp. Wood and steel were found there. As for the next destination, that was a snow dune, surprisingly. Well, she must have had her reasons. Apparently, not finding much in the way of reason to go to a hill with a hanged man. Well, she might look into that eventually, just not during this night, or rather, not send the scout party over there to deal with that, as she needed to be in Sanctuary to keep things from falling apart. Well, someone needs to do it. I should know.
Bundle up. It's getting colder. Work time. Get back to work.
Although there was a means of gathering more wood and more coal, a means of gathering more steel would be needed at some points. A gathering post near that steel pile would help, but the steelworks would also be most welcome.